Welcome to Grow My Etsy Shop podcast, the drips of knowledge you need to start growing. Hey, welcome. So today I want to talk about the concept of middle pricing. Let's work backwards here. So if you're in a situation where you have competition and you're aware of your competition, and maybe your competition is selling on Etsy and it's selling online, or you know a brand that has a lot of social media following and they're able to sell off of Etsy, and you're kind of sitting in this spot of, I don't really know what to do from here because the people on Etsy are kind of cheaper than me, and the people who are selling off of Etsy are selling for more of a higher price point, and I'm kind of stuck in this area of I don't know how to scale. Do I just triple down on Etsy? Do I try to go out into the world where there's a brand already in front of me? Which do I do here? This was an exact question that I had in the Growth Society this last week, and she placed a lot of the links. So she's like, here's some of my competitors that are selling for cheaper than me. Here's some new shops that are kind of moving fast. They've already got bestsellers and stuff like that. They're selling similar products. Here's this bigger brand that sells for more expensive than me, but they're not on Etsy. Help me out here. So I had an opportunity to look at those, go through them, and I actually recorded a video and I placed it just in the comments to say, hey, watch this. This will kind of open your eyes to something. But what I did is I opened up her product, her store, and I found a product, clicked on it, opened it up. And then I went through her competition and I opened up, so I had 3 tabs. 1 was her, 2 were the competition. And as I was going through it and looking at it, I was noticing and showing there isn't a whole lot of difference between what I'm seeing. Between the person there was one that was, I think, $10 cheaper, one that was $5 cheaper, and then her product. Now, middle pricing isn't something that you're born into. You fall into it. You fall into middle pricing because what happens is you go out and you start to sell, and then you get really comfortable with the price. So you're like, oh wow, I can actually increase my price and still make a lot of sales. And so like it's very common that people even increase their pricing during the holiday season to not run out early on their inventory or whatnot. And so they're like, hey, I want to extend this out. I actually had a good logical conversation with someone yesterday about this strategy. She was saying, I am worried that I'm going to run out of my stuff before the end of the year. And so I'm trying to push ads. I'm trying to have Etsy push other stuff, not this thing that I currently am selling a lot of. And I said to her, what's the difference between you running out of inventory? Because she was like, I don't think I can get more until the new year. So I said, what's the difference between you running out of inventory today and running out of inventory on December 29th? You know, if you're going to sell it all in one day, sounds great to me. Obviously that's a lot of work, but you get what I'm saying. I just didn't understand, why are you afraid of running out? And she brought up this point, and I was like, that is super logical thinking. She was like, well, this product is one of my best sellers, which means it attracts, it gets clicks, it gets purchases. This is what Etsy likes to promote. And so she was saying, if I run out early, then I have to mark that this listing that has a lot of sway power on Etsy is no longer available. And now Etsy's going to take one of my other listings, or maybe use one of my competitors' listings to replace that gap that I would be putting out there. And I was like, that's great logic. It's great logic because she's right in that. So this is a side note for you guys. If you have a listing that's kind of cooking, we definitely want to keep that listing up during this spike season. And the way that we can do that, and I see people do this all the time, is that they will increase the price by a little bit to control inventory. Or won't run ads to that, but they'll run ads to other products to help control inventory. So, side note. So let's get back into middle pricing here. Like I was saying, it's not something you are born into. It's something that's created over time, and it's usually when someone starts to recognize your success, or multiple people are recognizing your success, and then they start to kind of take your products. And so you might be on either side of the spectrum, meaning that you've looked ahead and said, hey, these products are doing well, I can make that. And so now you're entering the market, or you have an established brand that's starting to feel the effects of someone munching on you. Let me say that again. Someone munching at you. This is where longevity of a product needs to be accounted for when you're developing and creating a business around a certain product or niche, is that you have to recognize how easy can this be ripped off? How easy can someone else do this? If I'm buying a bunch of stuff from China, assembling it on my end, what's stopping someone else from doing the same thing? Usually the answer is not much. And so you have a shelf life based on when this is going to take place. If you are a blacksmith and very talented at what you're doing, you have a bit more of a runway because the typical person is not a blacksmith. And then if they are blacksmith, they have to be as talented as you are to be able to provide the type of product that you're providing. But if you're assembling things or whatnot, you're definitely much more on the chopping block, which means that your game is more about speed than it is comfort. Meaning instead of building a business that gives you the life that you're looking for, you have to instead say, I need to make as much money as I can, as fast as I can from this product. And because I'm probably not going to be doing this in 10 years. And if you can look in the mirror and have that conversation with yourself, it can be a motivating thing to say, I'm going to buckle down and really go for this and take some risks, because I know that if I just make a livable wage, that within 3 or 4 years, I might have a lot of my income cut out by people who are just mimicking what I'm already doing. But that's not the point of this podcast. The point of this episode is to talk about what we can do when we start to smell ourselves in that situation. Smell ourselves? Gosh, Jared. So let's go back to our friend here. She has a product. I'm just going to keep pricing very simple. She's $15. There's one that looks just like her, selling for 10. One that looks just like her, that's a very new store, selling for 5. And she's saying, I don't know how the $5 people are profitable. It's literally very similar to what I'm doing, yet they're selling a lot. And the answer is they're probably not very profitable. They're just undercutting to build up what they're doing. The $10 one, she's like, I can see that one, there is margins in there, but yeah, it's not what I'm used to operating at. I'm used to being able to sell at high volumes my $15 version, and I'm just not seeing what I'm doing. So the exercise that we did is I opened up all 3, and I explained to her, well, I opened up all 4, which was the brand that was selling off of Etsy, that was selling for more than her, and then showing the brands that were on Etsy. And there's this thing called middle pricing, which is what she is, middle pricing. And how middle pricing works is this. I'll explain it to you. You have a product. Let's go the $5 version. What is the $5 version going to attract? It's going to attract the person who's most fearful about buying online. Because the reason that they're buying the $5 version isn't necessarily because they think it's going to be superior. It has the least amount of risk that's associated with it. So if I'm only spending $5, if it's the worst product on planet Earth, it's okay. Because I'm only out $5. But if I start to spend more money, and her product, in her defense, scales up, starts at, if you just want the one thing, it's 15, but it scales up to what she's doing. This is a D2C jewelry brand, is what I'm referring to here. That means direct to consumer jewelry brand. So she's selling jewelry, and so which is a very difficult thing to price. And she's saying, look, there's my jewelry let's just use our pricing for 5. There's this other piece of jewelry for 10. There's mine for 15. So you may be asking yourself, Jared, why is it called middle pricing when you're talking about the $15 version? I'll tell you why. Middle pricing is when you're not premium and you're not cheap. That's what middle pricing means. You're right in the middle. And the problem with this, I shouldn't say that there isn't a problem. It's just a problem if you're not addressing it correctly. But the issue, there you go. The issue with this is if you are a middle-priced product that doesn't convince the premium people that you are premium, because price alone isn't going to work that way. Meaning if I see 3 pieces of bubble gum and they're the exact same brand with the exact same flavoring, and one store sells it for $5, one store sells it for $10, and one store sells it for $15, what is my assumption at this stage? It's that CVS down the street is ripping me off because I can get it at Walmart for $5. And so I make the assumption of, this is the same product, I'm just getting a better deal from this shop owner. And so that's what you have to internalize, is you have to look at this and say, do I just look like a shop that's trying to rip someone off with the same product that they can get for cheaper? And if the answer, which was this in this situation, that's what I was revealing to her. I was saying, I see no difference. Now, in her defense, it's because the cheaper shops had ripped off her style. And so her flow, her shop, her listings, she pioneered it. And then these cheaper shops came in and started to take that from her. So now she's saying, Jared, I have an issue. I'm noticing this dip in what I'm doing. And I'm saying, hey, what used to be smooth waters isn't the case anymore. And now what's happened is what used to work, because this is what we get our heads stuck in a lot. I get people who come to me often and say, I want to do the same amount of work I've always done, and I don't want to change what I'm currently doing, but I want it to work the same way it worked a year ago. And this is the situation with that. I actually had a boss, a client is a strong word. Well, he was a high-paying client. There's a good way that's the best way to say it. So he had the right to kind of boss me around because he was paying me a lot of money. And he had this mind frame, which was, I'm hiring you, Jared, to give me the results that I had 2 years ago, doing the same amount of work without changing anything. And so obviously, this didn't work in our relationship because I was saying, no one is a magician in this. No one can do this. And so you have to be a business owner first, not just someone who sells a product. So with this gal's situation, when I had all three opened up, I was able to clearly show her, you just look like the expensive CVS. It just looks like your shop is overcharging for this product. So what we did is we laid out those three products, and we start to say, you have to move the mindset that someone, and there's two different directions you can go with this, and I want you to tackle both of these. And so if you're following along at home, you got your piece of paper out or whatever, I want you to write down these two things. You have to justify and you have to convince. Those are the two words that you have to go for. Meaning, when someone sees your listing, sees your product, you have to justify why you are more expensive. And then once you've justified that, so here's a great example. With this particular brand, there were beads involved. So these beads had letters or numbers on them. And a question that someone might have, and if you've sold, which she has sold thousands of her product. So she probably has a lot of feedback and a lot of things that people like about her product. However, when I was going through her product, it was very much like, here's my product, choose which one you want, check out. It was very much checkout heavy as opposed to any of the things we're going to be talking about here. So I said, what are going to be some of the main questions you have? Maybe people are worried that they can't wear these to the gym, that if they sweat, the lettering will go away. They can't swim with them. They can't shower with them. They can't sleep with them. That they don't last long. Maybe they last 6 months. Maybe they last, who knows? You do though, shop owner. And so what you need to do is get into the mind of your consumer, and you need to address the things that make them say, oh, that's why it's more expensive. Create the justification first. So for example, if she was to say, these are gym safe, swim safe, sleep safe, shower safe, and could even go the extra mile by saying not all are. So not everything is going to be able to do what this does, but mine can. That would immediately justify why it was more expensive. You would see the $5 version, you would see the $15 version, and the $15 version would be saying, oh, we're gym ready, we're sleep ready, we're swim ready, we're shower ready. So they're like, oh, I don't have to take it off. That would be super annoying to take all these things off, because it's like a layered look. Oh, that'd be annoying to take all those things off, or whatever. And so immediately you've justified the purchase, or justified the price. Oh, that's why they're more. That makes sense. That's why that brand's more. So now you move into step 2. Step 2 being, I have to convince them that they need to spend more for this. Because there's a difference between justifying why it's more and convincing someone why it's more. So Jared, the Ferrari is more than your Honda Accord. Why? Because here's all the reasons. I go, yeah, it makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense why that would be more than my car. Now you have to convince me that I need it. And that's where the shift becomes. So this is where more of an emotional connection needs to take place with the reasonings of your justification. So here's a good example of this. once we tell them it's sweat proof, it's waterproof, it's 24/7, 7 days a week, wear, won't break, we guarantee we'll replace it if it does. Those are all justification reasons why they're more expensive. You then move into the convincing side, which it would be more around, look, if you're active, if you go to the gym, you don't want to worry about these things. If you are out running, if you're a runner, if you are someone who swims and is outdoors all the time, goes to the beach, whatever, this is your bracelet. That's convincing. Because now what happens is, if you know your avatar, you can connect to your avatar and say, look, I know what you do. I know the life you live. You're going to need this bracelet instead of these cheaper ones. And now you've moved into, that's now in their mind. So they're like, oh, that's why it's more expensive. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, yeah, I am that person. I probably am going to do those things. It probably would be annoying. Oh, I didn't think about that if it broke. I wonder if the cheaper ones are going to break quicker. All of those things are what convince someone to start to lean your direction, to start to say, I do need this middle price. I do need, and well, you're not, I shouldn't say it like that, because in your mind, you're no longer a middle price to them. You're a more premium price. So that's the shift that you have to make, that you don't want to fall into middle pricing. You want to fall more into a premium price. And what do you get with premium? Better products. So you can't be a premium product unless it's better than your competition. So this is where you can have a heart-to-heart with yourself, is to say, am I more expensive than my competition? And do I offer a superior product than my competition? And luckily, this can come in different ways, meaning, do I just present better than my competition? Am I just an easier checkout than my competition? Do I just look better visually, pictures, than my competition? Do I have more reviews than my competition? These are all things that help with that can help give you that edge that you're looking for. The problem with Etsy is that your competition can see everything that you're doing. And so as you start to make those changes, they can be behind you. And so truthfully, where it's going to actually fall is the product itself superior in a way that they can't make the same claims. And that's where you can then enter from middle pricing to more premium feel that now becomes the cheap option for premium. Let me rephrase that. $15 for these bracelets only seems expensive when you put it next to the $5 version. So when I justify, oh, that's why it's $15, and then I say, oh, and this is all that it offers more, at that stage, that $15 is now a cheap option for a great product. And that's when you can win those people. I've shared this before. There are lots of cheap, I was going to go down to something I've already shared before. I'm not going to share that, so now I'm going to share something I've never shared before, which is there's lots of cheap pillows out there. And you can sell a pillow to anybody or anywhere. You can go to TJ Maxx and buy yourself a pillow. Or you can hit these really premium purple pillows that do all these things. But what about the middle pillows? And so you think about the strategy there. What do they need to do? Well, they don't need to be purple pillow, but they need to be better than the cheap pillows. So you're getting what I'm saying here. That's what you need to think and look and act like and move like on Etsy to make this happen. I attended this conference. Well, it was a virtual conference, is a strong word. There's a guy that's really connected into social media marketing and things like this, paid media buying. And he ran a conference and said, hey, this is what I talk to a lot of the people up in Facebook and in Instagram and things like that. And what it does is it just gives you a visual. You've heard me say this a lot on the podcast. Etsy follows suits with these people. So a lot of the stuff that they're starting to cut edge with and what they're working on, Etsy follows behind them. So a lot of the updates we've seen on Etsy is just because these tech companies have kind of pioneered this strategy of algorithm work. One of the things that he came back with, so there's this term, it's called media buying. And a media buyer is someone who you would hire who's really good at finding audiences that can convert for your ad. So usually there's a creative team that builds ads, and then you hire a media buyer. And the media buyer is like, all right, we're going to take your audiences, we're going to layer them up, we're going to run tests, we're going to run data, and we're going to see which audiences work best, which layering things work for us, and then scale that process. That's a media buyer. And he came back and he said, media buyers are dead. because A, you have a shift of just what AI can do, which is essentially analyze data. And so, ooh, yikes, media buyers will feel that. But more importantly, he said that these social media platforms are now heavily putting their reach upon content only. Meaning, even if you are a media buyer that's in there that just knows how to work the algorithm and set things up and when to turn bids off and when to turn them on, they said at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good you are. If Meta thinks that your creative isn't very good, it will flop. And if you have terrible targeting, but your creative is good, they'll expand it beyond the reach of your audience. Meaning, even if you're like, hey, only show this to these people. Like, let's just say you're selling a Superman paraphernalia thing. So you're like, target only people who have watched the 1980s Superman. That's not very good targeting, because there's lots of people who've watched Superman and are Superman fans, and maybe Marvel and yada, yada, yada. So if someone was to do that, in theory, they wouldn't do well running ads, because they'd be running to just a really specific kind of weird niche of 1980s people, but the product they're showing isn't necessarily representative of the 1980s Superman. If you're a true fan of Superman, you might know that it was or was not a 1980s. I don't know. I'm not a true fan of Superman, so if my facts might not be right here, I apologize. But the point is, you would run that and it wouldn't do very well, because that's where you would hire a media buyer. You'd be like, oh, look, no, you're probably missing your avatar. It's probably more here. Let me build this out for you. We'll test some stuff. We'll try different headlines. Let's see if this works. The way Meta is working now is to say, look, if you have really great creative and you drop it into the 1980s stuff and we know, oh, that's really great, we're going to just expand it to the audience that we know is going to work for you. We know more about the audience. And the reason for this is that algorithms can't reveal as much data as they once did to marketers because of all the issues with privacy and all this stuff. So you used to be like, hey, I want to target the recently married, had a birthday last month, missing front tooth woman. And Facebook was like, yep, got you. And now they're like, why don't you just give us the product and we'll figure out who the missing front tooth recently married person is for you. That way this whole creepy privacy thing isn't an issue anymore. And so they're taking the lead in being able to move this out. So their big call to action is like, just make great creative that we can then use our algorithm to see, is it working? And we'll promote you from there. So what do we learn from this? Well, we're learning that the algorithm is favoring the human behavior and less on the media buying, or in Etsy scenario, less on SEO. For years and years and years, it has been in how do I write SEO? How do I do this? And that was a trigger word. Man, if I wanted to get a podcast to download, I would just write SEO hack, and everyone and their dog would download that episode, because everyone wants to listen to SEO. And if you're a fan, you've heard me say this for years, and at this point, it does not hold the weight that it once did. It's still important, but that's not where you're important. The stuff that you're hearing on this podcast, this is the stuff that's important. You have to learn how to sell in your listings. That's the secret. And once you do that, Etsy will promote you. They will figure out what you're selling, and that's what SEO does. It helps them tell them what it is that you're selling. But the rest is on you as a business owner. And I think that this is really great, because as much as we want to be able to say, look, I'm going to type in this cool headline and then all of a sudden I'm going to be on the front page of Etsy, it will reward potentially you, but can also reward potentially people who just know SEO better than you. This is truly product based. And so doubling down on you as a shop owner and being able to do that, I think is and will be the future, and is currently the future of Etsy. So take this stuff. Remember, if you wrote it down, justification and convincing. You got to justify your purchase and then convince them of this. Jared, when should I do this? How should I do this? Should I put in my details? Hell no, you shouldn't put in your details, because ain't nobody reading those. Where are you going to put those? You're going to put those right in the listing photos themselves. Tell them what they're looking at. When they see a picture of your bracelets, I want you to drop right in there. They are waterproof. They are this. They are that. So people are seeing your product and learning about your product. An exercise that I like to do with my growth students is I say, pull the plug on the computer. I want you to get 2 or 3 pictures in, and then I'm going to pull the plug on your computer. Your computer's going to die. And then I want you to recall what you learned about the product. If you can't, within 3 pictures, say, oh, I learned that it was waterproof. I learned that they had a guarantee. I learned that I could wear it to the gym. I learned that I saw that it was really beautiful. I saw that it looked well made. That's what you want. Instead of, I saw a picture of a bracelet in 3 different angles. Do you know anything about it? No. What did you learn? Nothing. Then you weren't being sold in the process. And so this is where we put that information. Okay. That's it. Till next week. Oh, I forgot I have a call to action now. If you like this stuff, go to my Growth Society. That's my school group that I'm building up. It's been awesome. This is where literally this podcast conversation came from. So I would go check it out if I were you. See ya.